From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Capitol Report. I'm Bill Laird along with co-host Dave Perry, and we have a great show lined up for you today. As we all know, the Office of the Attorney General, the state of West Virginia, is a very important public office holding many different areas of responsibility, and we're very pleased to have with us today on the Capitol Report show a gentleman who is seeking the Democrat nomination for election to the office of the Attorney General in the state of West Virginia, Sam Petsonk. And Sam, welcome to the Capitol Report show.
Thank you very much for having me, Bill and
Thank
Dave.
you, Sam.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, again, running in a statewide election, 55 counties, a lot of ground to cover, but it's important, for you to introduce yourself to the people of the state of West Virginia. So if you could, maybe on the front end, just tell us a little bit about who Sam Petsonk is and your interest in this race.
Well, I'm glad to do that. I live here in Fayette County, out at Edmond, and I've worked all across West Virginia. I'm originally born up in Morgantown, and I've lived and worked for a number of years in southern West Virginia. I got started after college working down in Mullins, and I worked with the community services in that area on local community development projects, worked with the county commission and some other groups down in those areas, and had the good opportunity to go on from there to work for U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd for the last few years that he was in the United States Senate. I was fortunate to learn a lot from Senator Byrd. I represented the issues, or advised him on issues of labor and energy policy during that period, critical issues for our state. After Senator Byrd passed away, I came back to West Virginia and eventually went to work as a lawyer representing working people, often coal miners and other families across our state on all matter of wage, benefit, health care, public education. In fact, I think, as you know, Bill and Dave here, I've worked on litigating to improve our public education system. These are all critical challenges, that we deal with in our families, in our communities, and I know it's common challenges that our state is confronting in all 55 counties. So that's a little bit about my background, how I got into the political world, and a bunch of friends asked me, would I consider running for the office of Attorney General, given my background, my work across the state. It's a tall order, and I take it very seriously, but I decided that I would get into this race. And I'm glad to answer questions further about myself or about the office.
Well, again, it appears from your work experience, public interest matters, advocacy, those types of things, they obviously seem to be things that have always been important to Sam Petsonk. Well,
absolutely, Bill. I mean, I grew up around a lot of people forget north central West Virginia, all across that part of the country, western PA, northern Ohio. We do a lot of coal mining over in those areas. So I was raised in and around coal mining communities, coal miners all my life, and I've seen how that industry has suffered, has struggled, and I've seen tens of thousands of West Virginians, a lot of the families that I grew up around, my friends growing up, seeing their dads or in some cases their moms lose health care as coal business has dwindled, seeing people struggle to get basic compensation for having black lung disease. I've done a lot of work in my practice representing coal miners, seeking black lung benefits, medical benefits for what they've suffered and earned in their work. And I felt obligated. I think we all have a duty to give back to the people who have worked to make our state what it is. And that's sort of a part of how I found myself in public interest legal work.
Sam, how does a Sam Petsonk candidacy versus a Patrick Morrisey candidacy differ?
Well, unfortunately, I believe that our state situation has almost gone from bad to worse during the time that gentleman has held the office. We've seen the overdose rate double, Dave. over the last 8 years and some odd years in West Virginia. Since he's held that office, we've seen working people all across the state lose the wealth that they've worked to earn, lose their health insurance benefits. So what is the job of the Attorney General? The job of the Attorney General is to serve as the people's lawyer, protecting the public interest, representing the people in the common interests of our state. And the other job of the Attorney General is to advise the agencies of our state. And here we've seen our communities decimated by the downturn in coal and by the addiction crisis. Where has our Attorney General been? She sure as heck has not been there enforcing our wage and hour, protecting the interests of our working people as countless coal companies have hauled off to bankruptcy court. I've been there. Just here in Fayette County, I've represented miners whose company went bankrupt. They lost their pay. Nobody's there fighting for them in bankruptcy court. My legal services program has done that work. And I would do it as Attorney General. It's first and foremost the state's obligation to protect our people, to protect what our people have earned, and to defend those basic rights and freedoms that we should have in West Virginia. And right there is a substantial difference. I would be there representing our people, and that includes direct representation for people who are struggling through the addiction crisis. It's one thing to go to court every now and then and haul off with a little bit of money, but unless we are there in the Attorney General's office, providing representation and advocacy for patients, for people in recovery, we're never going to turn the corner on beating the stigma that accompanies addiction too often in our communities. We need to we need to lead, provide legal representation to our people so they can get back in the workforce, get back with their families. That's what it'll take to turn the corner on the addiction crisis. We haven't seen that kind of leadership from our Attorney General.
Mm-hmm. Sam, again, looking at issues that are important to people, and certainly we see from our the national debate stage, core issue that is on everybody's mind is health care, and in order for us to have health care, it needs to be affordable health care, and health care in which people have access to. From your standpoint, looking at the duties and responsibilities of the Attorney General, how can the Attorney General of the state of West Virginia actually, take a leadership role in the types of reforms and measures we need to, undertake in order to make health care accessible, affordable, and available to the citizens of this state?
It's a critical question, Bill, and I've put a great deal of thought into that very question through my law practice. The first thing the Attorney General can do is lead us in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. Our Attorney General now has gotten West Virginia involved in litigation that would kick over hundreds of thousands of people off of their health care in West Virginia. We can't afford to lose access to health insurance for nearly 200,000 of our people. If we succeed in these lawsuits, that would eliminate guaranteed protection for pre-existing conditions. Hundreds of thousands of West Virginians could lose their health insurance. Our state can't afford for that to happen, and so the first thing our Attorney General needs to do is lead us in the right direction, which would be to focus on protecting patients, on protecting access to affordable and quality health care. Some people in our state do have access to quality health care. Our union movement has fought hard for that. And we have health insurance in the public and the private sector that does serve our people in many respects. But we have deficits. And the Attorney General represents individuals. He represents, he manages the litigation before the Human Rights Commission, in some cases, the Insurance Commission. Those entities, those agencies are here to protect our people, to protect access to health care. So I do it in my law practice. As Attorney General, I would be sure to protect the access to quality and affordable health care through those agencies of state government. That's the least that our people deserve.
And, occasionally, and I think we have examples of it in the past where, attorney generals can file friends of the court briefs advocating, one side of an issue. Is that an appropriate role for the attorney general to undertake? And I assume you could advocate on one side or the other of that issue.
Well, the Attorney General has, like I say, two basic obligations: to serve as the people's lawyer protecting the public interest, and to advise the agencies of our state on their legal obligations. Getting into lawsuits that would undermine access to affordable and quality health care in West Virginia, I believe to be absolutely opposed to the interests of our people. So, the Attorney General does get into court and has the obligation in some cases to protect the public interest by litigating on behalf of our people. But the lawsuits that we're involved in now would jeopardize access to health care for hundreds of thousands of West Virginians. That's simply wrong. We've got to get moving in a better direction.
Sam, why don't you elaborate a little bit on some of those lawsuits if you can?
Well, certainly there are several cases that are pending around the country which would eliminate what is known as the Medicaid expansion program. Medicaid expansion has increased access to health care services for many people in West Virginia. We've got almost 200,000 people covered under that program right now. And it's not just basic health care services. Those programs pay for critical addiction and recovery services that our people need. If we cut off access to treatment and recovery for potentially thousands of West Virginians, how can we possibly imagine getting our way through to the other side of the addiction crisis? So I think that the lawsuits which would impair and reverse the Medicaid expansion program are dangerous for us. And I would also say that we have to protect access to health care coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, Dave. Some of this litigation would threaten that coverage.
Sam, again, kind of a corollary to health care, and we've already discussed a little bit about the addiction and the challenges of building meaningful community-based addiction treatment capacities in our state. But most people have heard some of the statistical information of large pharmaceutical corporations sending large amounts of opioid medications into comparatively small communities. The community of Kermit comes to mind, and to the average person watching this program, that just does not make sense. And again, whether we do or don't monitor those things, what is it that our Attorney General can begin to do to try to bend that curve? And because so many families out there have just have been touched and affected by the addiction crisis in our state, we really need to start finding some meaningful solutions. What can the AG do to help?
The AG absolutely must continue litigating against the responsible companies who have perpetuated the crisis. But moreover, we need a comprehensive approach to addressing substance use disorder that is driving addiction and that is frustrating our ability to secure success with recovery for people who are caught in the throes of addiction in our state. So when we talk about responding to the addiction crisis, on the one hand, our Human Rights Act stands for the proposition, state law in West Virginia, that says that if you have substance use disorder and you're succeeding with recovery, the state and the private sector have obligations to support you in getting back into the workforce and getting back with your family. The Attorney General enforces the Human Rights Act in West Virginia. So if we want to see access to vocational rehabilitation, job training, the workforce development system, that's kind of stability that will destigmatize people who are coming through long-term recovery. The Attorney General should be there leading that effort. I've written about that. I've advocated for it in my law practice. And as the Attorney General, I would be active with the Human Rights Commission to protect those specific rights to advocate for people who are struggling to succeed with long-term recovery. Additionally, you ask about how do we get so many opioids in our communities to begin with? Well, if you're sitting there at home thinking about how do you access opioids, you go through a healthcare provider. There are several decision makers in the healthcare delivery system. In many cases, the most influential of those decision makers is the insurance mechanism, the insurance company. Now, we have the ability to oversee and to regulate the conduct of health insurance carriers in our state. And the Attorney General has an obligation to ensure that if you have an orthopedic injury, your insurance carrier looks carefully at intervening early to conduct the imaging, to figure out whether surgery, whether physical therapy can help you to recover and to rehabilitate to a successful, healthy state, instead of simply chucking you onto a long-term course of opioids that will not help you, that will not serve you. And I think that too often we haven't focused on improving the outcomes through that insurance mechanism. And that's a specific focus of mine. I think that the Attorney General should be present and should be advocating for better results through the insurance system. If that makes sense to you, Bill.
It certainly does. And again, an extraordinarily important issue affecting the lives of a lot of people in West Virginia. There's several other issues we'd like to get into. I know public education is something very important to you, the rights of working families. If you'll stick around for our second segment, we'll get into some of those issues. So we're going to go ahead and take a break and be right back to the Capitol Report show. So stay with us, everybody.
Stay tuned. The West Virginia Capitol Report will be right back. The West Virginia Capitol Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber & Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt & Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280. From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report as we continue our discussion with Sam Petsonk, Democrat candidate for election to the office of the Attorney General in the state of West Virginia. And David, I believe you have a public education question.
Yes, Bill. Of course, we all know how important public education is to the state of West Virginia, the children in the state of West Virginia. And in terms of economic development, public education is very important. So how would an Attorney General's office interface with the Department of Education, or what role does the Attorney General's office play relevant to public education, Sam?
Well, Dave, you know it. I think most of our viewers are going to know that, hey, our schools have serious challenges. Our public education system needs major investment and support to improve the quality and the service that we provide to children and to support our professional educators all across our state. Shoot, we've seen it here in Fayette County. State took over the school system, schools struggling for adequate facilities. We had to rough cave it in on our school children here in several places in Fayette County over the years in recent time. And so what have we done? In my law practice, I've gotten in and litigated to try to help to resolve those issues. What do we do? As I've mentioned many times, the Attorney General has two main jobs: to serve as the people's lawyer, to protect the public interest, and to advise the agencies of the state. So on public education, the Attorney General should be there first and foremost as the people's lawyer to protect our constitutional mandate for a thorough and efficient education. That is, our Constitution guarantees to each child in West Virginia an adequate and equitable public education system. The Attorney General has to enforce that interest and represent our children in that process. So I've done it in my law practice. That's first and foremost. But in addition, how do we get there? The Attorney General should work with the Department of Education, the State School Board, and the School Building Authority. These are the principal agencies that ensure quality and adequacy, equity in our public education system. I have worked with those agencies in my private law practice. We have good relationships, we have good leadership within those agencies. And so I would be focused as Attorney General, as I have been in my private law practice, on working with our professional educators in the state agencies and in the local level to protect our community schools and to ensure that we never compromise in delivering a quality public education system for our state.
Sam, we know the position our President Attorney General took during the work stoppage. What would a Sam Petsonk position be if public educators in the state of West Virginia would repeat their actions again?
Well, brother, I'm a labor lawyer. I've devoted my life to representing working people who are trying to improve our state, who are trying to improve our economy, and that's exactly what our teachers were doing in the work stoppage here lately. Our Attorney General should never attack our teachers. Our Attorney General should be there as a champion to lift up community schools, to lift up professional educators, and to protect that critical interest for our children, providing that first quality, adequate, and equitable education system. The Attorney General better be there to recognize the important rights of our teachers. And you can rest assured, as a labor lawyer, as someone who's represented working people throughout my life, I would do that as Attorney General. I would be there to support our teachers, support our community schools.
You know, Sam, beyond, the work of teachers, it's certainly employment is important to all families in West Virginia. And again, with, your background in labor law, making that transition from, that focal interest of your practice, to the official duties and responsibilities of the Attorney General of our state. What is it that the Attorney General could and should be doing to protect the rights of workers, working families? The jobs are so critical to having a whole life, and there needs to be a lot of protections, I think, accorded to our workers in the workplace.
Absolutely, Bill. I can tell you that what has happened to hundreds and really thousands of working people across our state over the last several years shouldn't happen to anybody. Layoffs without receiving any severance pay. Oftentimes, as coal companies have hauled off to bankruptcy court, we've seen people in our state whose paychecks bounce. Their employer doesn't even pay them for the work that they've done. I've represented miners here in Fayette County and other places who have worked for several weeks or a month only to find their paychecks bounced, company had hauled off to bankruptcy court. Now, we recover for those folks, but it's really, in my practice, I have. But it's really the job of the state to enforce our wage and hour laws. In the cases I've been involved with, even down here lately, here at Fayette County, we see companies are not complying with the most basic wage bonding and wage and hour requirements that are here in our code to protect our people, to ensure that they are paid for what they've earned. And as the Attorney General, you can rest assured I would be focused on enforcing that wage bond statute and enforcing our wage and hour laws. And when companies haul off to bankruptcy court and try to ditch thousands of retirees, everything they've worked for in their lives, buddy, I do it every day in my law practice, and it would be a priority for me that the state of West Virginia stands with those folks in bankruptcy court and stands to collect the important revenues that should be there for our people and for our state. I would do all of those things. It's a top obligation of an Attorney General, and sadly, I don't think our Attorney General has done that for us for too long now.
Sam, small business is the core of the state of West Virginia. And what do you think the Attorney General could do to protect small business?
Well, certainly it starts with ensuring fair competition, Dave. People forget that the Attorney General in West Virginia enforces our antitrust statute. What does that mean? It means that our law says business has to be fair. Our economy can't function if there are top dogs in the room who can come in and compete on unfair terms with our local businesses. But buddy, we see that all the time in our state. So antitrust enforcement and fair enforcement of our wage and hour laws will ensure that the small business that pays their employees, that competes on fair terms here in West Virginia, that pays West Virginia taxes, will succeed over the business that shirks those obligations under our law. We do it through antitrust enforcement. We do it through wage and hour enforcement. That's what I do in my law practice, and that's the job of the Attorney General.
Yes, Sam, one last question. Unfortunately, our time is expiring, but consumer protection. Again, I think that is still an active division within the Attorney General's office. A lot of times the little guy gets hurt by consumer purchases, a lot of fraudulent practices. I think the internet kind of creates an environment in which those things can happen. What's your view of the role of the Attorney General in consumer protection in the state?
Well, I believe the Attorney General is the chief officer. It's certainly clear in our law. It's his obligation to enforce our West Virginia Consumer Credit and Protection Act. It would be a central focus of mine. I've been able to work in my law practice also with many consumer lawyers who have represented homeowners and consumers of all stripes across West Virginia. We need to enforce those consumer protection laws, and certainly in this internet age, as you mentioned, we have real concerns about cybersecurity. I know that I've been in conversation with attorneys general from across the country who are taking leadership on pushing for better policy on cybersecurity. We need to get there, and I don't think we've done what we need to in West Virginia. It's a focus of mine: consumer protection and cybersecurity.
The West Virginia Capitol Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber & Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt & Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280. From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report Show as we close out today's program. And David, Sam Petsonk, a very energetic, focused candidate, the Attorney General's office, very important to the citizens of West Virginia. And again, we'll be following that election very closely, but Sam Petsonk seems to be laser focused on that duties of that office.
Absolutely, and very intellectual, and apparently is very committed to the people of West Virginia and not big business and not big pharma.
And there is a difference, my friend.
Definitely.
You bet. So we're going to go ahead and close out today's program. To you, the viewers, we'd like to thank you all for tuning us in each week for the West Virginia Capitol Report. Again, thanks for tuning us in. Have a good week, and goodbye, everybody.
This has been the West Virginia Capitol Report.